All right, we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to another interview with one of our wonderful legislative representatives to be, Sherae Lascelles. I didn't even ask if I pronounced your last name correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, and I am so sorry. Go ahead and introduce yourself for our membership.
All righty, thank you so much for having me today. Sherae Lascelles, not necessarily plural, but there's definitely an S at the end. Just the one though, just me. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm running for the 43rd Legislative District for the House of Representatives for Washington State, position 2.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you are crazy busy with everything you're doing, and we really appreciate it. Could you talk about your district, what it kind of looks like, but also the people within it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our district goes all the way up to around Green Lake in Seattle, a little bit of Greenwood, and then down through like the U District, Finney Ridge, has SLU and Capitol Hill as like kind of the center mass, especially of density of constituents, and then into like a point down to the waterfront. It's a very interesting shape, honestly. There's a little bit of a hook also into this other neighborhood that I haven't quite figured out how that border happened, but here we are. When it comes to the folks that live in this district, it has one of the largest populations of the district, I think, in the entire state. It also has the highest wealth per capita of a district, and also some of the folks with the highest level of housing insecurity in the state as well, the highest levels. So it's a big mixed bag. It also has a lot of diversity, especially around the schools. We have multiple universities and community colleges in our district. So that's been a big factor of one of the reasons I'm running, is because a lot of the youth haven't been really represented in their representation in legislation.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That's quite a mix of what you've got going on in your district. So I was going to go into something else I normally do, but I do want you to point out and talk about all the things that you do within your district. I know you're not just running for office. I know you've been a big, crucial piece to the actual community. Can you talk about, what kind of things you do in the community or have been doing in the community?
Yeah, so the nicest and easiest way to put it is I'm a harm reductionist. So I do a lot of work around public health, direct services through the organizations that I founded and work with. Greenlight Project and POC SWAP, People of Color Sex Work Outreach Project. And I work in community with a lot of other organizations that are doing harm reduction when it comes to public health for either pathogens or for drug user health or for services for folks that are unhoused. We kind of work together to tackle all the issues that stigmatized and criminalized populations in this city face every single day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so one of the big things that we're about with our Revolution Washington and that we work on is we work on anti-corruption and election reform and getting big money out of politics. I'm sorry, Courtney's trying to say something real quick before I go too much further, I think.
Yeah, but sorry, before you leave what you do in your community, I heard, I'm in Tacoma, so a lot of what I hear about you is rumors that you were very involved with the Capitol Hill, occupied. You'll have to fill in the last part for me. Is this accurate? Were you involved in organizing around them?
Protest. I can't say that I was necessarily. I will say that how I understand CHOP is that folks don't have individual leaders. I do know that my community was there. We service my community, so I service my community wherever they are.
Excellent. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Back to anti-corruption.
Yes, the root of all evil, right? The American Anti-Corruption Act is one of the things we work on, and it works on a bunch of different things, which like gerrymandering, which sounds like might have happened in your district with that little piece that you were talking about. You weren't sure.
I thought that'd be something of interest to y'all.
And things like that. So we really watch kind of where the money come from and things like that. So one of the things is we ask is, how are you fundraising? Are you planning on, or have you taken any big dark money PAC PAC money, or are you taking like small dollar donations? Is there a theme to how you fundraise?
Yeah, so I don't know about the word dark money PAC, but I did take PACT funds from Opportunity PAC and Persist PAC, which specifically were built in this last couple of cycles for Black femme candidates. And I mean, honestly, without that nudge before the primary, I don't know if anyone else may have been as invested or in belief of my campaign being legitimate. But I did, vet them both and ask, where each, dollar came from, and checked into also who the public donors were. Didn't see any conflicts of interest when it came to their politics or their lifestyles or their work history that would have been directly a conflict with the futures and health and safety of my communities. So the dark money thing in association to PACs really is a misnomer. I feel like PACs in themselves are not necessarily always the issue. The ability to create them in the ways that we are able to create them is the issue, and that it's legal to be able to hide money. However, there are some really good folks out there that don't know how to affect, politics, especially electoral politics, or help in ways other than creating, 501c4s and PACs, because not everyone has 40 hours a week to dedicate in support of a campaign on the ground physically, but some folks do have extra cash and they want to help out. So I do understand there being like a negative connotation with the word PAC 24/7, but I really want to be fair to the folks that I know I've worked with, and for the folks that I would not work with, and be really honest that there's a difference.
Yeah, there is a big difference. You're correct. And you're right. For us to progress, we do need to be able to have some form to be able to battle against. So thank you. When I said big.
Otherwise, definitely all individual donors. Ironically, we have a very high average donor amount.
Oh, beautiful. Nice.
Hard to say a lot of small donors. There are a lot of small donors as well, but we have, I think, over $100 average per individual donor.
That's beautiful. I'm happy to hear that. The other thing that we looking at working on, especially coming up next week, is ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting will help open up the possibility of not a top 2 establishment candidate. Do you know much about it? And if so, how do you feel about that? And would you work at maybe changing that once you got in?
Yeah, I know a little bit about ranked choice voting. It was really something I looked a lot into last year during the city council races here in Seattle, because we had 56 people running for city council seats, 72 people on the ballot for the primary throughout the city, and it was a lot because a lot of folks really dwindled some wonderful human beings down to what they are traditionally considered under establishment Democrats or Republicans to be viable, whatever that rubric is or those qualifications. And they really came down to financing. And it was super unfortunate that people's viability and anyone's faith in one individual in a race of 10 to 13 people came down to, let's just look at the PDC. Let's just look at SEEC and how much money they've raised, and that will determine who's of value to me, because I don't want to not hedge my bets and get someone worse. And with ranked choice voting, I feel like Seattle, King County, Washington State would probably look a lot different for representation, and I would hope so for the entire country. I think there would be a lot more representation of different types of individuals in governing positions. And I really look forward to that day when we actually can see ourselves clearly, the entire spectrum of who we are represented in our House and in our Senate.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. Oh, okay. Let's give Courtney a moment to ask questions, and then I'll be back. Thank you very much.
To be honest, though, you should have mentioned that I am not establishment, and I still made it through a top 2 primary.
Oh, yes,
the most
sorry.
powerful person in this state.
Please, yeah,
So,
sorry. In our minds, yes, we know that, but yes, please let's highlight
easier,
that.
Absolutely, but it would have been easier if it was ranked choice voting.
Absolutely.
People were afraid to vote for me.
Right. Shows how your community trusts in you and know you, because you've been out out there, right? And it shows a difference of somebody who's been working with the people and somebody who's been lip servicing the people.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other stuff I didn't touch on about like the policy work I have been doing at the municipal and, county level and the state level prior to, running, or that I ran for a city council seat and did pretty well in previous year. But there's a lot of different things that really aren't like traditional politics of how we were able to garner 31% of the vote in the top two primary.
What was your, because I know that, during COVID, everybody was trying to scramble, right? And trying to figure out how they're going to campaign. And not everybody did fare well, but again, you did come out with.
But I didn't scramble and I wasn't spending my energy trying to campaign. Like that's the thing that's, I don't want to say the joke, but the interesting part is I launched my campaign the second week of March. And then we got notice that we were going to probably be locked down within a couple of weeks. We'd already seen a lot of effects in the community that we serve through the orgs that I work with. And it was a no-brainer. I dropped pretty much everything that was on the campaign. I said, if y'all want to follow me around and like document what I'm doing, great, but I'm not campaigning. I have things to do for the community to prevent this from being a bigger disaster. I started immediately working on housing policy for COVID relief and eviction moratorium stuff. And then immediately started creating a larger food bank for community members, rental assistance, cash assistance. We did some housing work personally as well that we didn't really have the backing for before. But yeah, it was just really a matter of like, well, it's not really, there's no point in me running a campaign for community if community is dying.
Man, you just gave me
So you're saying working within the community was its own campaigning? Like meeting the needs of your neighbors means they like you and might vote for you?
And I wish that was why I did it, but it's not why.
Oh, we know.
No.
Also be the situation.
Yeah, no, we were actually following you and seeing what people are doing because we reached out and was trying to get connect with the campaign, and that's sort of like, nope, she's doing. We're like, okay, good. We're like, that's where we would like people to be rather than not so.
Just a reminder. I understand Sherae's preferences are they them pronouns.
Yes. Did I miss out?
I think you did.
Oh, I apologize. I really apologize. I do. Thank you.
So we try to catch each other, either whether it's pronouns or pronunciations of names. We try to support each other through it.
Absolutely, thank you. I appreciate it. One good trick that I use, especially for reference to me, it might not be true for other folks that use gender neutral pronouns, but when people struggle with it as a form of harm reduction, and for me, if you just start all sentences referring to me with my name, then it won't be a slip up, and it's a lot easier to just say the name over and over again instead.
That's usually what I do, and so sometimes I apologize. Yes, but I do find that to be easier myself, just because I'm not always aware of who uses what pronouns. So trying to really garner people's names and really showing who they are. I try to really do that. So thank you for walking through that with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Courtney, go ahead with your questions.
Oh, I feel like I don't have a lot prepared, but I am looking at our questionnaire, and for a little reference, we prepared this questionnaire long before George Floyd's murder. And we would have rephrased our policing questions to reflect more how we feel. And so you answered the questions very well. And for being formatted in a before time, because the attitude has changed so much regarding policing these days. Can you tell us a little bit about your views on policing? And for preface, we in our questionnaire mentioned Campaign Zero, which is Black Lives Matter related, and their 10 asks. Tacoma is 4 of them or more, and it doesn't keep people from being murdered in Tacoma. Mm-hmm. So please, the floor is yours. Tell us about your policing views.
I actually want to touch first on your lead up, the context of the question. I'm finding it very uncomfortable to watch folks get comfortable with the Overton window shifting. And you just said it. There was before times to it being acceptable to be harder on accountability for police and abolitionism. And that's really unfortunate. That we couldn't call it like we saw it and that how we experienced it without it being essentially taboo and unacceptable. But we've been saying it in the Black and brown communities for our whole existence, that these systems are literally made to only hinder us and kill us. And now that other folks are starting to recognize that, I'm happy that that shift is happening. But I'm also experiencing a lot of questionnaires with a thrown on, no space for nuance question about, well, how do you feel about the movement for Black lives? And it's been a little exhausting to have to answer that question over and over and over again, especially since most questionnaires are geared towards individuals who do not have my identities. They're quite literally geared toward and assuming that the only people that have made it to this far in an electoral race are cishet white men. And it shows in the questionnaires. And that is evidence of the systemic racism that have led us to the situations where the police, whom are supposed to protect us, have been systematically killing us and not being held to account for those actions. So this whole cycle of how uncomfortable it is to run for office, not just obviously right now, but ever, when all the questions that you're answering are not for you. The system was never set up for you, and it's very evident when you engage with folks about how you feel about your own identity and your own safety in this country. I really don't know how to explain how I feel about policing. It changes literally day to day, because sometimes I am scared and I think, oh, it'd be great if I was as comfortable as my neighbors contacting emergency services, but that's not an option sometimes. And most of the time it's not, because I am afraid of what they will do to me more than what's happening to me at that moment. We talk about accountability, police accountability all the time, but we've been talking about that for decades upon decades upon decades, while also inflating their budgets, and they're getting worse and worse and worse. So I feel like the only way to hold folks to account, the only thing that we really understand apparently in this country, is money. So divestments, strategic, large divestments from carceral and punitive systems, and those being reinvested directly back into Black and brown communities that are under-resourced, that are quite literally being under-resourced, is what leads to engagement with policing. It's kind of a done. It's time. It's been time. It's been time. And I can say, like, pass as many laws as you want on police accountability. I don't think adding more laws that we can't enforce because we can't afford to enforce them are going to make anything better for the communities that are being killed. I really only think that taking away laws that force engagement with law enforcement and taking away funds that they can use to hurt communities are some of our only options now.
Thank you. That was, I'd say, very accurate and heartfelt. And thank you for that feedback.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm here for that. That's what I'm here for. We need to just demystify the whole thing. We are all expected to ask the same question or these same questions because they're the hot topics. And I'm like, yeah, great. The Overton window is shifting. I'm really stoked about it. But,
it hurts.
let's look further into the future.
Go ahead. Sorry, Courtney.
My family has a bad police story. So it was hard running for office last year, wanting to be honest about my feelings about police. And all I was able to say was, sometimes more police officers don't make us more safe. And easing and your statement about the questions not being applicable to those who are like you. And I experienced that last year with myself, filling out union questionnaires. They're like, you've been running for office, tell us some stories from workers. And I'm like, I am a worker. And I have horror stories from years of being a worker, mine and my coworkers. Like, I don't need to hear it. I know it. So
Mhm.
you're right. They're not catering to us, the working class, and all those with intersections that make it even more challenging. So
No,
thank you for
and
fighting a good fight.
it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate too, because all of the most progressive orgs that could be pushing this even further, um, we have this roadmap of how we are supposed to be engaging in electoral politics, and then we fall victim to the same institutional and administrative violence, essentially, that we're trying to fight against with our organizing. And it's very alienating to folks, especially multiply marginalized folks that are trying to participate and don't know where to start and don't feel like they belong because it was never made for us. And I really want to help orgs, especially that have been fighting the good fight, but don't know why it's not as effective, decolonize their organizing so that we can be more effective. We can have more, representation in organizing, and therefore more organizing to support folks being representative in elected office. Like, it's the roadmap, and we really got to work on, especially first and foremost, how ableist and inaccessible questionnaires are.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. We've struggled within our own organization, so hopefully we'll get it righter.
I believe you can.
Let's see. I saw your question about gun legislation, about keeping guns out of the hands of abusers. America's in a bind. The CDC's been banned from researching gun violence for years. So actually knowing enough about gun violence to make reasonable legislation that would actually impact the violence and not disproportionately inhibit people of color and other oppressed groups from having their own right access to their constitutional right. Do you have any suggestions or hopes for what you want to see before you start making rules about that?
I don't think that it makes any sense for me to propose any rules on gun legislation. I mean, honestly, folks that have been more impacted from gun violence should be the ones at the table deciding on what might have changed their circumstances and their encounters. I have my own experiences, obviously, with being threatened with firearms, but I also have experiences where firearms potentially saved my life. So it's very complicated for me. And I'm from Eastern Washington, where I grew up in a family where everyone except me were hunters. That's another thing that's been complicated in my entire lifetime. I've never been 100% comfortable around firearms, but that doesn't mean that I haven't also benefited from their presence in my life. It's difficult. But what I will say is I don't think I'm the authority on it. And I don't think that my experiences are enough of the picture to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't be doing with, their constitutional right. But I do think we don't put any money into researching things that have caused so much death and harm in our community, then do we really care about public health? Is a public health issue and not know what's actually going on and the effects of firearms in our community. So anything that the state would be willing to do to fund the research, because we know we love doing that here in Washington, is putting in a lot of money and a lot of allocations towards research and work groups. That is one I would definitely back. The
Excellent.
national,
So
I can't influence that too much at this moment.
So then on the flip side, should gun legislation come before you, you won't be reactionary to it and just push it because it's something?
No.
You'll have standards?
I mean, I think that Seattle is only one part of the state, and it's really interesting to hear, especially my opponent, talk about Eastern Washington as if I am unaware of Eastern Washington, even though I am from Eastern Washington. I didn't move to Seattle until this district until 10 years ago. I actually am more comfortable with Eastern Washington's culture and politics than Seattle's. Because at least there, people are a lot more transparent about what they care about and what their priorities are. And there's a lot actually more class solidarity over there because there's less wealth. My parents live, in farmland, not unawares of like what it's like on the other side of the mountains. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is from. They don't talk about Seattle messing up politics for no reason. People are out of touch with what it's like to be rural. And they think they're so progressive because they live in a city when, I felt like I had more support being homeless in Eastern Washington than I can see being given to a community here in Seattle. There's more money, which is interesting. Like there was couches for me in Eastern Washington. That ain't like that here. So I don't think that anyone in Eastern Washington, is down with us being reactionary over here because we think it's the right thing to do. And folks being abused and threatened and harmed by firearms and the ownership of firearms and the folks that own firearms. That's not just a Seattle, Democrat progressive issue. That's throughout the state. So I think we shouldn't be reactionary to it. We should have bigger conversation about it, and we should be studying it statewide. It's just really unfortunate that we keep passing things and not being able to enforce them, and then think that they did a good job patting themselves in the back, and yet we still have more and more violence. So here we are.
Excellent. Thank you. I have family in Eastern Washington and have traveled back and forth my whole life. And when I hear people say, screw it, just cut the state in half, I'm like, nah. And even in Western Washington, there's like, I know I have friends in Mason County who are like, I want to get involved with your state group, but I don't want Seattle making all the decisions for us. So it's everywhere outside of King County that questions Seattle's influence.
Oh yeah.
So
remember it growing up before we moved here. I was like, oh, they're that powerful. There's really cool things happening over there. I want to be there. And no, it's not really like that.
No, it's not. You have to play the rules a bit too much there. Tote that line. Actually, not even toting the line. They want you all across the line.
I really value when we have someone who has experienced both sides of the state running for anything at the state level, because it's unifying and neighborly at the very least. So that's really exciting to me personally, like that you have that duality of experience. So awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I miss it in some aspects and not in other aspects, but here we are.
I love my family. They don't vote like I do.
All right, let's talk. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Rhonda.
Okay, so let's talk about healthcare. I know we talked about it quickly at the beginning before we went live. So that's another big thing that we are behind is whole Washington. It's a universal single payer healthcare initiative that's going to be coming out that we're working on next year. Have you heard about that? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Yes, and I'm excited.
That's all we need to know. Yes, we are. Are you planning on working on that in the next year coming up, like going out and encouraging people to get signatures to get it onto the ballot? Are you that excited about it?
You know what? I don't know. Depends on when you start collecting signatures and what I'm doing.
April, and we'll keep you updated. How's that?
Well, keep an eye out. If I have, a new job by April, then
okay, I didn't mean you particularly having to go get meaning your constituents like, hey guys, this is good stuff,
absolutely. And I also specifically want to start workshopping and have been with other orgs that do harm reduction here in Seattle, ways to get folks involved without being exploitative or tokenizing of people that are in precarious situations or currently experiencing homelessness that would also benefit from having access to healthcare, being involved and getting more involved without it being, without negatively impacting them further.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
we're working on those relationships. We're working on building, very large care networks and giving them updates when they want about like what we are doing, politically, and asking them also what they need to see where our priorities should lie, and that's a big one.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Did you have another subject ready?
Well, I like to go through the questionnaire to see if there's more clarification needed or if it has content that I think is above and beyond the average, and which I think a lot of what you said on your questionnaire hits that second part, but I also feel like we're hitting a lot of it here. And I haven't pulled up my list, Rhonda. But it's a list of services or stuff that the question was posed in our group, the Washington Bernie-Crats group. What services should be socialized?
Mm.
And we healthcare, schools, like, so we went through the basics, and then we got about 20 things on there. And so natural resources, transportation, is there a system, without me looking at my list, is there a system that you would like to see either completely privatized or completely unprivatized?
Hmm. I don't know if
Or you want me
we
to pull up my list?
yeah, I think maybe the list, but I mean, I don't know if this would count in it, but I think maybe childcare.
That was one of them on the
It's on
list.
there.
And it's hard too, because I know that there are so many folks that are able to make a great living in the private sector, with their specialties in caretaking / education simultaneously. And I know a lot of amazing, au pairs and nannies, and I know a lot of amazing private tutors. But I also think that there should be state funding to make that accessible to everyone in the state. And it shouldn't just be accessible to become an au pair or a nanny for folks that have, higher ed or for folks that are, immigrating. It's very interesting to see the demographics that end up in care work. And as many times as we try, we talk about protecting the labor rights and protecting the rights of folks that do caregiving work, but then we don't fund it.
Yep.
And
that touches
the theme. This is the whole thing. Is like we're just like we talk about being progressive about the rights of laborers and workers, but then the folks in power are like, we need protections. What they're saying is, let's sign some paper that says we care, but not actually give them jobs. And that's been breaking my brain for years now.
Excellent. Well, I did pull up my list, so I'll run through them, and if there's something you disagree with or want to talk about, you want to hit that when I finish? Okay. And also what you just said about that, it hits on a question that's in our questionnaire about a caregiver's basic income. And so that always makes me happy because that came out of my brain. So here's the list: healthcare, postal service, schools, prisons, foster care, childcare, utilities, water, internet, cell service, public lands and natural resources, banks, mass transit, airways, railways, ferries, bus, etc., infrastructure, military and its associated industrial complex, Veterans Administration, scientific funding, space exploration in this form of NASA, not Space Force, libraries, elections, legal services, first responders, and community housing.
For the most part, I feel like there should be a public option for all of those things, publicly owned option. But I don't necessarily think that we should take away enterprise for everything. But we can't talk about wanting and all these things for folks without funding them and providing work for community in our institutions, kind of period. like how else are we going to make sure that it's, safe work environments, quality work environments, people are getting, livable wages, getting healthcare and everything else they need, unless we create the institutions to manage them, period.
So next, let's talk about taxes then, because that's what we're talking about is funding. Look at your eyes light up! This is great. We have the most regressive tax system here in Washington State. Since you got perked up, I'm just going to shut up and let you go talk about taxes. What are your thoughts about everything that we have going on here in Washington?
I have many thoughts on our taxes, or the lack thereof. So it's been great this year to have a lot of folks talk about taxes, but I also think that I might be one of the only folks talking about lowering, if not removing, sales tax in a lot of areas in the state.
Good.
That kind of, I see shocked faces a lot when I say that. Like, what?
That's
how are we gonna pay
exciting.
for
And
things? I'm like, well, income tax, of course.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So right now, my opponent's been spending a lot of energy talking about previous wins in taxation, with helping with like the Jumpstart bill here in Seattle at the municipal level, not at the state level, and helping with inheritance taxes, basically. I don't really love how he refers to it, but it is what it is. But what we really need beyond that, and what's been comfortable before I ran for folks to say, is that there should be a capital gains tax. And it's like, yeah, there's consensus on capital gains tax. But if we can get a consensus on capital gains tax, we are just a nudge away from an income tax, and more importantly, a wealth tax.
Yep.
And we have to do kind of all of these simultaneously. The other one that's big, we talk about taxing corporations, is closing loopholes in B&O. At this point, we don't really need to be having them. We don't need to be having so many incentives for companies to be here. Not because I want them to leave, but because the incentives we gave in the first place, they did their job. They brought a lot of jobs to the area. They brought a lot of wealth to the area. We don't need to be giving those breaks anymore. We just don't. We need those investments directly into community, because it's directly impacting our infrastructure and the health of our cities. To have such large enterprises here that aren't paying their fair share in the community. So it's time. It's been time. So yeah, the whole list: income tax, capital gains tax, wealth tax, and really taking a hard look at removing sales taxes in some areas, if not at least lowering them.
Excellent.
are you at all interested in property tax modification for the elderly, people who own their homes?
I mean, I'm interested in learning more about it. I just started spending time talking with some housing folks that are more specifically in the design and land use and zoning, and then talking about, like, at the federal level, REITs and those impacts on our communities and our economies. I don't know personally anyone that owns their home that is in a retirement bracket at the moment. I've actually mostly encountered folks that can't afford to own property even in retirement. But that might also be that I'm just not, I really don't know folks with that much wealth in the city, in that age range.
That's reasonable.
But I would really
and
experiences
I don't
and
think
like what
we
they
as
look for.
yeah, and I don't think most of us have a strong view on it. It was a question posed. I saw the question posed recently, and so I thought I'd pose it here. So, yeah. But I do. I'm sorry, I might be lagging. I'll stop. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Yeah, you are lagging a little bit. I just wanted to, while we're talking about finances and money and stuff, have you heard of Bob Hasagawa's plan for a state bank?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your thoughts about that?
Stoked. It's actually been on my platform to support municipal and state banking since day one when I announced in March.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think we're gonna have him on this Sunday actually, and talking about that more.
It'd be very interesting. It's honestly a necessity for us to be able to reach some economic justice. A lot of folks don't even have access to banking right now, especially banking that would allow them to invest in their communities or purchase land or secure themselves for their own retirement. So it's a matter of economic justice for us to have a public option for banking.
Beautiful, thank you. Because So predatory loan lenders. So yes, so let's keep in this theme of money and exploitation, and how talking about how they think the state bank and getting things more localized could help in that. Do you have any real thoughts or about those predatory loan places and ways that we can help alleviate those in our state?
Yeah, this might be something that really makes some folks that are supporters of my opponent angry. Check cashing and lenders, even though some folks that were in the legislature are really proud of some legislation to regulate that industry, are still receiving funds from the makers of those industries, Money Tree especially, donations to their campaigns. So my thinking is, if you are still receiving funds from the founder or owner of a money lending agency that has been regulated because it has been historically predatory, then you probably weren't hard enough on them, and therefore you probably weren't protecting the community as much as you could have. Apologies, connection drop.
I think we're back. I'm sorry.
No worries. Can you hear me now?
I
Yeah,
can hear you.
internet went crazy. I apologize. I think it was still going live out there, so it's still on. So
Oh, where did I leave off? What'd you hear last?
I
okay,
thought I cut out before everybody. I thought I was alone in the loss.
where did you cut out? What do you remember last hearing?
I just remember my panic overwhelming whatever thoughts were coming in before that.
Yeah, I started panicking. There's some issues with the opponent, so and how they're thinking.
Oh,
And
no,
did
I
you
was
get
saying
money from them?
oh, yeah. What I was saying is they're really proud of these regulations that they were putting on, money lending and predatory practices in previous sessions, but they're still getting, donations from the owners of money lending and check cashing institutions. So my thought is, if you are still getting donations from those individuals, you probably were not hard enough on them, and you probably didn't protect the community as much as you could have, and that's a serious red flag for me.
Ding ding.
We can do
All
more.
right, so now I know we're getting close to one, and I know I told you we'd be off by one, and I know there's a lot more questions we probably have for you, but I want to give you this opportunity to make sure that you mention anything or stress anything that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that
Yes, sir.
voters hear, and then also let people know where they can find you, how they can help, and go ahead and go.
All right. Not anything that I can think of that we didn't touch on that seemed like it would be of interest to y'all's group or reach, your membership. I don't know what to name the folks that participate in your organizing work, but your folks over there. But
Our
I
nerds.
will say, yeah. But I will say, reach out to the campaign. We're on social media, and our website's sheraeforstate.com. It's at Sherae for State on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't really do much on social media myself, but I have a ridiculously amazing team that has been putting good information out there like nuts and having amazing events, either to get out the vote, canvassing, to educate folks about my platform, but also how to educate people how to engage in political process here in Seattle. There are a lot of people that are new to the city, even though we are in a pandemic. People still had to come here for economic opportunity as well as education. So we have a lot of folks that are not registered but need to be. Here we are, or just moved or were displaced and their address is updated. So in your get out the vote efforts, if you don't necessarily have a candidate you're really excited about, definitely help people learn how to navigate the system, and remember, remind them where their boxes are, because, unless you vote first day and very early, there's a possibility there will be some delays right now.
Yes, we'll
But
be pushing. There's a national vote early day on the 24th. And so we are going to be pushing everybody to drop them off in the ballot boxes early. So yeah, well, hopefully we're going to get some rallies across the state kind of pushing that. So thank you for
oh, heck
mentioning that.
yeah, I can't wait. And then,
And
you know, more importantly, for our campaign, we just need the name out there more than anything. We really like when folks are able to take their own personal pieces as why they support me and post that with access and links to what we're doing. And I'd be remiss and probably get yelled at by fundraisers on my campaign if I did not say, if you have $5 to donate, go for it. I would really appreciate some more small donors, get more names, and you know, have more friends in the community. Gives us an idea of where our reach is at. We also obviously want to pay folks and get PPE and other supplies to the community.
excellent. Thank you again so much for taking time out and talking with us today. And we're really excited about your race. And we'll say goodbye to everybody for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, should be turning.